If you're an entrepreneur and your business is not yet registered, if you're looking to grow your registered business, or you're an accomplished professional. Our Elevate program supports you with access to finance, access to markets, access to capacity building. Sign up now or refer a friend at ecobank.com/elevate. Elevate by EcoBank. A better way, a better Africa.
Sant yàlla.
looy xaar utal Wave nga scan nga fay nag doo ci yokku dara.
Jar Oil. The company have filling stations across the country, and our rates are relatively cheaper than anyone else across the country. Jar Oil is the biggest producer and distributor of cement in the country with the most competitive prices in the market.
It's Monday, the 27th of July, 2026, and you're with Coffee Time with Peter Gomez. Coffee Time with Peter Gomez comes to you exclusively on West Coast Radio, broadcasting to listeners in this country on a frequency of 92.1 megahertz on the FM band. We're also being heard globally on www.wcr.gm. It's 6 minutes, almost 7 minutes past 9 o'clock in the morning. On set with me now is Saikou Sawo, leader of the Golden Era Party, GEP. Now, following his party's recent split from the PPP, the People's Progressive Party, the Gambia's Independence Party, Sawo joins us to chart the way forward for GEP, outline its possible role in a UDP-led coalition, and share his concerns about omissions in the IEC voter register. He will also discuss how the Golden Era Party hopes to contribute meaningfully to national development while weighing in on urgent national issues, from the border crisis with Senegal to rising homicide cases, the Auditor General's judgment, and the appointment of the Chief Justice. Saikou is here to give us his perspectives, therefore, on policy, politics, and the future of the Gambia. Saikou, good to see you again.
Likewise, Peter. Good morning.
Very good. How have you been? It's been what? About 6-7 weeks since we were last year?
A couple months.
Yeah.
But it's been great.
It's been great. Fantastic. Yeah. So what prompted the GEP's withdrawal from the much vaunted, alliance with the PPP, and how do you define the party's new direction?
Unfortunately, we found ourselves in that situation where we had to, pull back, myself, and then obviously when I joined PPP, I had people from Golden Era, and the reason they made me flag bearer is because they saw the effort that we've made, as Golden Era. The credibility is there, the passion for a better Gambia is there. So, and then when we came to the PPP, we came with the same energy. We did all the legwork, the heavy lifting. Unfortunately, we had to part ways, and my reason is based on principles. The whole, the relationship has been very fantastic. There was no issue. We had a degree of autonomy, right? Especially with me being the flag bearer, I'm on the ground. Honorable Malike Fall is in Atlanta. Obviously, he's not on the ground. So we had a certain degree of autonomy, especially with me and my team. And, I'm very creative. We want to tackle issues. We want to reach out to a certain demographic in a way they could relate to us. So those are the value proposition we bring to the table. So we've been able to execute most of this the way, and they gave us that autonomy, right? But when the whole UDP thing started, the dynamic kind of shifted a little bit. It was too much sentiment within the party. And then, some executives within the party that made it look like, this is just Nene and Saikou's doing, and which is not the case. And then also, the reason why I deviated from the whole PPP thing is like the leadership didn't do certain things that I expected them to do. So it's, which may come back and undermine our credibility. So that's not something I want to be part of. If I can't unify and add value, I don't want to be and then personally, I don't operate well when there's too much dysfunction. It's not how I operate, because I'm very sincere. When we came to PPP, it's well documented, all the activities we've done. They didn't give us a dime. Nene and I were self-funding these activities. So when it came to UDP, that's where they drew the line. They started setting goalposts. Like I attended the UDP press conference and it was an issue, and it was a national issue.
I was going to say, when you refer to the UDP issue, yes. How did UDP come into, the GEP PPP alliance?
Yes. Actually, the initiative was my idea, I'll be honest. I spoke to Nene about it because, I started this journey with Nene, and she deserves to know, my standpoint on certain things. I told Nene, well, PPP as a party, we're doing what we can, to make sure, people know the party, especially those born in the late 80s, 90s. I was born in the late 80s. I have to learn so much about PPP myself. So imagine people born in 93, 94. They don't know. Yeah. They're clueless, right?
Neither of these would know anything about PPP.
Yes, exactly. So if we have to come and sell PPP to them, they already have a preconceived notion, the labeling, the propaganda that happened 30 years ago. So it took a lot of work. It took a lot of effort. So I talked to Nene. I was like, PPP right now, they don't have no mayor, no councillor, no MPs that I'm aware of.
No elected member in any level of government.
Yes. And as a legacy party, I feel like, man, we still have a long way to go as a party. Then I told Nene, I'm willing to put my goals and ambitions aside. Even let's collaborate, let's partner with a credible party in the Gambia, so that way 2027, the local government elections is coming, we can have people within PPP to hold certain positions, so that way we can start to create our base. In 2031, we stand a better chance. This was my idea. Nene was like, hey, I think that is great. We already have relationship through Golden Era days, because, we went to meet Baosenu. I know a lot of executives within UDP. I was like, I have great relationship. Reaching out to those people should be very quick and easy for me. So, and then we reached out to the policy director, Keba Nonko. I approached him. I was like, hey, this is my stance. I don't know what the party feels about this, because, you know the party better than I do. You've been a legacy PPP your whole life. We came and joined, and you know your people better than I do. He was like, well, if this is coming from you, the flag bearer, it shows how altruistic you are. Leaving your ambitions on the side, you could have been selfish about this, but you're looking at, long-term vision of the party. So he liked the idea, and I'm glad that he actually got the vision. So it's like, okay, I'll talk to Madike Fall, and this is something, if you're okay with it, we'll definitely champion it. So there was no issue amongst ourselves. Madike Fall also bought the idea, and then he constituted...
Madike bought the idea?
Yes. So he constituted a subcommittee that would be part of this coalition process, starting with UDP. So the subcommittee consisted of myself, Nene, Nanko, and 3 admin secretary, the national president, and, I believe Honorable Auntie Duda Kamaso was also part of the process.
Okay.
Yeah, so we had this committee, and then the negotiations, we had the green light, to engage. So I reached out to Honorable Auntie Bisane. He's a good friend of mine. We have a great relationship. And, even prior to that, we've always talked about, how we can collaborate at some point, And then he was like, hey, I'll also engage my party leader. We can see what we can do. And Baosenu, it's like, hey, I've met them before. Nene also has a, great relationship. Obviously, when her dad was in jail, so it was easy because it was organic. The relationship was credible, and so UDP. It took 3 to 4 weeks to actually finalize, the whole thing. So Keba Nonko drafted the policy, right? But I told them we need an approach to this. UDP is a heavyweight. They're the largest opposition party. We should approach them with common sense, and then we should give them their due. Because one thing I know for UDP that is non-negotiable is they want to be able to, lead, or, it has to be UDP-led. And the reason why I accepted that, because I also understood the political reality on the ground. They have the political capital. They have, one of the largest electorate base in the Gambia. They've put in the work for 20, 25 years consistently. Even the numbers, if you look at in 2021, UDP was 230, but if you look at the other parties from Amakande to Doi to Esafal, it's like still less than 200,000. So I was like, I think it makes sense. They've put in the work.
So you're saying collectively what UDP polled was greater than the rest of the opposition?
Yes, based on my analysis. Okay. And I believe, I'm correct about that. So I was like, well, they do have that electoral strength. And then, the party is credible. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not a UDP member. But if we have to win this election, creating another third force will be a disaster. And that's not what I want to be a part of. I may be wrong, but that's the stance that I've taken. So that's how we approach UDP. And I told Keba, with that being the case, when you're drafting this, make sure the preamble reflects that. Cut to the chase, straight to the point. I was like, when UDP even reads that first page, they're going to be like, okay, these people are coming to us with some sense. Because I value people's time. And for me, I'm very selfish with my time because I don't want to go back and forth. No, we have to.
I'm glad that you're letting me have at least 1 hour of your time today.
No, but because I try to be, I'm a very pragmatic person. I don't want to waste your time, my time going back and forth, and then we spend 2-3 months. It's counterproductive. Let's be genuine. Let's approach. Let's be realistic with our approach as well. And then Keba was like, because we had that meeting amongst ourselves, So when he drafted, because he's very smart, actually. I really respect the dude. He's an intellectual, and he understands, the grassroots politics of Gambia. So, again, I'm not trying to take credit, but I'm saying, I gave guidance in terms of the approach because I want us to cut to the chase. I was like, let's focus on how we can uplift our members because we have great people within the parties that can be MPs for their constituents. They can also add value. I was like, let's focus on those people. But let's not go into the negotiation, putting all these silly terms and conditions that UDP is like, nah, this is not feasible. So he drafted the agreement. I read it, all the clauses, the provisions were great. I was like, yeah, this is something UDP will accept. And that was the case. Okay. But it took 3 to 4 weeks. They have to also go to their leadership.
Of course.
But when the negotiations was ongoing, at what point do we have to tell PPP or the Secretary General to start sensitizing their own people? What are you waiting for? Like, that's not my place to tell the Secretary General or even Keba Nonko himself, hey, in parallel, while this is ongoing, start talking to your people. So there was a gap there. And then when this whole thing blew out, I wasn't happy with that. I was like, well, you know the party better than me. I shouldn't have to tell you, to do the needful. Nene and I led the negotiations with, our UDP counterpart. We've done our part. You need to do your part. As the flag bearer, I don't want to be told what to do. Whatever is good for the party, it puts the party in the limelight. That's what I've been doing, and it's well documented. You go to my Facebook, my personal TikTok, this is what I've been championing. And it was challenging. I didn't like, because I feel like they were too passive, and I don't operate like that, because if we say we want PPP in the 21st century, we should lead conversations. We shouldn't be just behind tagging along. So there was some communication breakdown issues there, and then you guys drafted the agreement. So when I even spoke to Standard Chartered, I said yes. I believe the party is, I didn't say it was...
Standard Chartered, you mean Standard?
Standard, the
newspaper.
Not the bank. Excuse me. So when I had a conversation with Standard, what I said was, hey, I believe the party is prepared to move forward because the leadership has shown me that. But how the leadership engages with its grassroots, with its regional people, that's something they should have focused on. That's not my place,
Okay. You describe the party as passive PPP.
Yes.
Is that because the head is distant? He's not on the ground?
I think that could have played a role.
You have a lot of Gambians who like to be led. All right? They don't take the initiative, but whatever you ask them to do, whatever you want them to do, they can do, 10 times over. But they have to be asked. I'm sure you've encountered that a lot. People who don't seize the initiative, they don't act on their own, they're not proactive. So do you think Madike not being on the ground has contributed to this passive nature of the PPP?
I think so. I believe so, because not being on the ground, and not on. I don't know. I just, but as a party leader and the Secretary General, I'm not trying to undermine his credibility, but I feel like he should have been way more proactive than he should have been, because we were negotiating this. We had 3 to 4 weeks. You drafted an agreement. UDP said, "Hey, this is fine. It's finalized from our end. They only made some minor tweaks." I mean, when they return the agreement back to you to sign, it shouldn't take. There should be no prolonged delays.
Is that where the problem started?
Yes.
Once the agreement was sent back for signatures,
yes,
someone was dragging their feet.
Yeah, and everything was blamed on the process, the constitutional process of PPP.
Okay.
And I respect the process, because obviously we say the voice of the people is the voice of the God, right? The voice of the
it sounds like a very rigid constitution they have then.
Yes,
if
yes.
The process
but the process is fine, but if you look at the process also, we have to go through the Central Executive Committee. We voted. 18 out of 20, 2 abstained, 18 did say yes.
Oh, okay.
Which is
an overwhelming majority.
Yes, it's like overwhelming majority. They reached out to the Board of Trustees. They said yes. So the last thing is the National Executive Committee. But what they wanted to do was raise funds so they can have in-person, they can convene and have an in-person meeting. And I believe they needed 2 people from each constituent. So they needed about 20 to 30 people, which is great. But 1 week went by, 2nd week went by, and I said, hey, if you guys are not able to raise, because there's some constraint with logistics and financial, I was like, if PPP cared about the process so much, it shouldn't be hard to raise less than $1,000. They only needed $69,000. And if your people cared
$69,000.
Dollars, yeah,
okay.
which is less than
$1,000. Just under $1,000.
Yeah, $1,000. If I really cared about the process, especially those in the diaspora, it takes just less than 5 people, $100, or even people on the ground. You have to put your money where your mouth is, But if this is your 2nd week and you're still at $12,000, and this is not the Gambia, we have to be proactive. I was like, well, if you're not able to raise, those funds, maybe just do a conference call. Have those, at least let's reach a quorum. For me, that's very important. If we need 2/3 to be there, out of those 30 people, let's make sure we have a quorum and let's proceed. Yeah. We cannot keep waiting for 2-3 weeks, because this is an agreement you drafted. Why do you prolong delays? Because now you create a vacuum for people that don't want a coalition to happen to come up with their own theories.
People could also ask, why were you in a rush?
Yes, but here's the thing, and here's what I've always championed. I respect the process, but this is a matter of political expediency. Yes, we want the process to go as it's supposed to, because we definitely want the consent of the people. And I could tell you for free, majority of the people wants this to happen. About 80 to 90% easy. So it's something that could have easily passed. But don't say, oh, we have a process. But the process also has to be practical. If you're not able to raise the funds within 2 weeks, at what point you, the leader, could say, hey, we're not able to raise the funds. Obviously, we're relying on you, the PPP members. So let's look at another alternative to have this meeting so we can come to a conclusion. There are other things we should focus on. Election is just 4 months away. This is not the only issue. There's voters disenfranchisement going on. We need to create. So these are a lot of. For me, I feel like, why waste too much time deliberating? I don't believe in too much deliberations. Let's get.
But in the meantime, how has the split affected your personal relationship with Madike? Because you always knew that the UDP was there, but you decided to go into an alliance with his PPP for a reason, and a lot of people thought, well, maybe they forged an unbreakable friendship while they both were in the US.
Yes, UDP has always existed, but I'm not the type of person, hey, I want to get to the top, I want to come through you and then use your influence. I'm ready to put in the work. That's why we created the Golden Era movement. Because
it's not a party, it's not a movement anymore, it's a party.
Yeah. So we were, Nene and I were ready to put in the work. We were ready to reach out to certain demographic that we felt is very important. They cannot be left out, which is the youth. Nene is more big on the women. So we were ready to put in the work. Yes, Nene has a relationship. She could have easily gone to Bauseno. Yes. But it was like, no, let's create the movement, let's create value.
That is your GEP. I'm talking about what drew you to the PPP instead of the UDP?
Initially?
Yes.
Initially, we aligned. Like I said, the relationship was great until this whole UDP saga came about. So there was
Did that
no
relationship begin with your relationship with Madike or Nene's with Madike?
No, because we got to that point where we wanted to collaborate, and with PPP being a legacy party, we have some of our executives reach out to them to see how we can work together.
Okay.
And then they were
So it was that legacy bit that was most attractive to you.
Yes, and I feel like they could, they also can add value to us because they've been in
But
politics.
in the meantime, you still feel comfortable to pick up your phone and dial up and speak to Madike, like, nothing happened.
Yes, I mean, I don't have any grudge against him. For me, it's just about the principle. I feel like the whole excuse, to hold that National Executive Committee is not a balanced and fair.
Okay.
I just don't think they were
Because it was holding you back according,
Yes.
our country.
Yes.
So how does the GEP view its potential role within a UDP-led coalition?
Yes, we are not a UDP member. It's easy for us to also reach out to other political parties and movements and say, hey, we are doing this for Gambians. And like I said, I initiated this whole thing, and Madike Fall saw the vision, and he said, yes, if it's coming from you as the flag bearer, it makes sense. It shows, you're not just thinking self, you're thinking
of country.
Of country. You're thinking of, So this is the same approach we can bring to the table with UDP, reaching out to other leaders. Because if you look at Gambia today, the issue is not about ideology. We all want...
You think the ideology is one and the same?
Yeah, it's very similar.
It may be called UDP ideology,
Yes.
GEP ideology,
Yes.
but you look at it, it's the same.
Because if you look at
it's a straight jacket ideology.
If you look at PVP's agenda, you look at Golden and agenda, you look at UDP's 5 points, and I've read other manifestos, they're very similar. We want better governance. But the issue is just centered around leadership. It's like, we have too many chiefs and not enough
exactly.
Indians. So it's like, okay, if it's the leadership, we need to compromise then, because the ideology is the same. If I believe in better governance, youth and women empowerment, energy, and then I can collaborate with UDP to have a better governance. You believe the same thing. So leadership should not be a problem. We should compromise. And then we should give flowers and credit where it's due. If you want to be like UDP, you want to have a say, go put in the work. It took them 20, 25, 30 years to get to the point.
30 years this year.
Yes, exactly.
30 years this year.
But this is what I've also recognized. They've put in the work. Like GEP right now, we're just getting started. We haven't put in, we're just getting warmed up. It's going to take 10, 15 years for us.
Even the PPP, it's a new version
of
the old PPP.
of the old PPP. Yeah. And then they want to rebrand. So, and this is what I told Madike Fall, because we had a heated phone call even before the split. Yes, I'll be honest with you. What I'm going to tell in his face is what I'll say on the radio. And I was like, this is not what I envision. When I'm going out there saying PPP in the 21st century, I want proactiveness. I want us to take the initiative. I want us to lead this conversation. Like, if you look at this whole voters thing, UDP have a software. Right now, I believe they have over 1,000 cases. Where is PPP in this as a legacy party? How many PPP voters may have been omitted in this?
Good question.
Why are you not taking those initiatives? Why are we not focused on that? Because you want people to vote, but if they can't even register to vote, what is the point of all this? It's pointless.
Good question.
So these are the things I want us to spearhead. We shouldn't be at the back waiting for other parties for UDP. So for me, attending that press conference, I say, it is a national issue. I participated in the supplementary voter registration. Who knows? Maybe I'm also omitted from the list. I don't know.
Maybe I'm also omitted from the list.
Yes, exactly. So me going there is a national issue, but they construe that as, hey, and we never had these issues like, hey, you can't do this, you need permission. I was like, I'm not going to be effective in my role if I have to wait for somebody in Atlanta to approve, take 2 days. I was like, there's no point. I just feel like there's an underlying issue that we're not being upfront about, and then the whole process thing is just delusional. It doesn't take that long to set up this meeting if you truly want that to happen. So that's why I was like, we need to dissociate ourselves from this. This is not PPP 21st century. We still want to do things the old ways. Business as usual is not going to change Gambia. We need to show from leadership top down, hey, we're ready for this. Everything should be outcome-based. People want to see tangibles. We don't want leaders to sit here and deliberate who's going to be the flag bearer. You don't even have anybody as local councillor, chairman. What are you talking about? Yeah.
So you said earlier that you're not a member of the UDP yet.
No.
Okay, so what's happening, what's going on right now as you try to forge an alliance now with the UDP?
Yes, GEP, we have our executives as well. Because right now we had to realign, we had to, because when we joined PPP, we joined wholeheartedly. You know, I told Nene, let's forget about GEP, let's push PPP. Because I was like, left to me alone, you know, the relationship has been erased.
Because you were being touted as the PPP flag bearer,
yes.
rather than GEP,
yes,
PPP.
Yeah. So we abandoned the whole GEP. We were focused on PPP, and we were looking at long-term viability of the parties. Sustainability, you know, everything I do, I look at the long-term sustainability plan. So when this whole thing came about, you know, it wasn't planned. We didn't know it was going to turn out this way, but we did it because we have our principles. We have strong conviction. Business as usual is not going to change Gambia. You have to take a stance. You have to take a firm approach if you want things to change, and that's not the reflection I'm seeing, especially with this whole UDP thing. It's too the people within PPP got too sentimental, and I'm not understanding why so much chaos within. And like I said, I don't operate in. If the environment is not conducive, people don't see the value that I bring and all the effort. I'm okay to saying, hey, I want to take a different direction. That's me. And because I'm genuine in whatever I do. So if they don't see that, well, I'm not the guy for them. And I'm ready to move forward. So GEP, as a party, collectively, we went back, reconstituted our whole, you know, because we have our own forums, you know, we have our central committee, and then everybody's aligned on, hey, let's continue this relationship. So our stance with GDP hasn't changed. But also we have to put our house in order. We have to focus on how we can.
Okay, PPP is in your past now, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it's UDP. You're working towards, you know, forging a relationship, an alliance with the UDP. How's that coming on?
Yes, I'll say it's going well. Nothing has changed. They know my stance. I'm all in for UDP-led coalition, and the reason is, like I said.
But for now, you haven't, officialized any kind of alliance. You haven't signed any agreement to say.
But that's coming soon.
The GEP and the UDP are in alliance.
Yeah, no, and the reason why we haven't done that yet, again, because this whole splitting from PPP wasn't planned. It wasn't like a preconceived notion, you know. So when the split,
are you suggesting it could still be repaired?
I just don't think PPP is ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no disrespect to the leadership.
There's no way of going back to the GEP, PPP alliance?
No.
Okay, so now in your sides are UDP and only UDP?
Yes. We're ready to collaborate with UDP and other like-minded that want to come join a UDP-led coalition because I feel like, you know, instead of creating a third force, that's a more viable path to victory. So reaching out to other people, signing that agreement with UDP. But again, like I said, when we split, we had to go back and regroup GEP. Our forums, our old people, we have to come back and put them in place. So right now, this week, we spend the whole week, you know, getting all that together. So I think the next step now is for us and our executives to tell UDP, hey, we're ready to move forward, let us know the next step. Because it's the same agreement, we're not changing anything. I read the agreement, I was among the lead negotiator alongside Nene.